Krystal Everdeen, and today I want to share with you how I crocheted this Moana inspired top. For this project I'm using 3 different colors of yarn: orange, cream, and brown. They're all size 4 100% acrylic, as well as a size 5mm hook. Now of course you can use whatever type of yarn that you would like, but if you need help finding yarn, I do have some links down below via my Amazon affiliate links where you could purchase yarn. And after you have your yarn, the first thing we're going to do is create our slip knot. Then we're going to chain however many chains it takes in order for it to wrap either around your entire body if you want the top to be just a solid top, or if you want it to be a corset-like top in the back so it's adjustable, like mine, then I would suggest that you leave about a 5-inch gap before it closes all around your body. That way that space could be used for the little corset design. So however many chains you need in order for it to wrap around your body, whichever way that you decide. For me, I'm typically a size extra small or small in US tops, so I chained 85 chains, and hopefully you could use that as like a reference. So after I've chained my 85 chains, I'm going to go back on that chain with my stitch of choice, and my stitch of choice is a half double crochet. And a half double crochet is yarn over through the stitch, yarn over, back through the stitch, yarn over through all 3 loops. And the reason why I chose a half double crochet is because I think it's a perfect middle ground of a tight stitch but also a flexible stitch. Now the other options you have are to make just a plain double crochet for this project. However, I find that for double crochets, which is yarn over through the stitch, yarn over, back through the stitch, yarn over through 2 loops, yarn over through the last 2 loops, these stitches are wider and leave a lot of space in between, so you could definitely see that there's holes here, which I do not like with my crochet top projects because of course they're more see-through. So the best option for it not being see-through would be to use a single crochet, which is one of the smallest stitches, so you can see that there's no gaps in between the single crochet. But as you keep using the single crochet, you'll find that it's not very flexible. It's rather stiff, so that's why I use a half double crochet, because yes, there is a little bit of holes that you can see, but not as many, and yet it still keeps the top flexible and soft. So that's why I use a half double crochet. But of course you could totally use whatever stitch that you like, either the single crochet if you want it to be really, not see-through and tight with no holes in between, or a double crochet if you want it to be really soft and flexible. But again, for me, half double crochet. Okay, so after I have decided my stitch, which is half double crochet, I'm going to make half double crochets all along the chain until I get to the very end, and then I will show you what I do at the end. Also, I forgot to mention this earlier, if you are a complete beginner to crochet and this is just all so fast for you, I do have a Crocheting for Beginners video linked in the description box down below if you want to check that out first, and then come back to this one, or maybe try out some more beginner friendly tutorials that I have on my channel. That's all available for you in the description box down below. So once you get to the end of the row, you're going to make sure that you go into the very last stitch of the row, and then you're going to chain 1, flip the project over, then go into the very first stitch of the new row, and then continue on making half double crochets or whatever stitch that you like for the rest of the row. And it's just really important that you keep doing that at the end of every row. That way the ends are going to be straight and they're not going to be all uneven and wonky. So again, the pattern so far is 85 chains, then 1 row of half double crochet, followed by this new row of half double crochet, and I'm going to be making a total of 7 rows of half double crochet, making sure that every time I get to the end of the row, I'm going to go into the very last stitch of the row, chain 1, flip the project over, then go into the very first stitch of the new row to keep those edges straight. So what we're working on here is the very top of Moana's top, so it's just solid orange for now, and then we're going to add a row of brown for that stripe that she has. But for now she has just a solid chunk of just orange or like coral, whatever color her actual top is. And for me, I again made 7 rows of half double crochet, but I am short, so depending on your size and preference, you may need to make more rows than me if you're taller than me, so just be aware of that. But for me, I made 7 rows, and after 7 rows I attached my brown yarn and just continue on making a row of half double crochet as I normally would with the original color, but this time with the added brown color. And again, I just made one row of this because it's just going to be one stripe of brown. And after I've made my row of brown half double crochet, this is what the project looks like so far. Now Moana's top also has two stripes of white or cream, and originally I did add those stripes the same way I added this brown one with a row of half double crochet, but I didn't really like the way it looked, so I have a plan for it later on. So just ignore that for now. We're going to add that in the end. And for now, we're just going to make a solid orange section and then add the stripes on top of it. And it's going to make more sense later, but for now I am going to make 4 rows of half double crochet with just the orange, and then we're going to start adding the really fun design after that. So this is what my project looks like so far with just the one brown stripe. So again, it is 7 rows of half double crochet followed by 1 row of half double crochet with brown, followed by 4 rows of half double crochet with orange, and now 1 row of half double crochet with the brown again, just to make another stripe before we add in the granny squares, which yes, I'm going to show you how to make the granny squares. So I'm just re-adding my brown colored yarn to make 1 row of half double crochet for the second stripe that she has. And now that I've added that brown stripe, this is what the project looks like so far, and this is how it looks like, or should look like. So it's the top, and then working our way towards the bottom, and now we're going to work on these granny squares so we could add them all along the top. So we are going to end up making quite a few of them, but don't worry, they are fairly simple to make, and it makes such a difference with the look of the top. I'm just like so proud of the way that this top came out, so I'm like super excited to share this with you. Anywho, to make these granny squares, we're going to start off with the orange colored yarn, and you're either going to make a magic ring or chain 3, then go back into the very first chain that you created and make a single crochet. Then from that single crochet, you're going to find 1 stitch, and you're going to make 8 double crochets inside of that 1 stitch. And again, a double crochet is a yarn over through the stitch, yarn over back through the stitch, yarn over through 2 loops, yarn over through the last 2 loops. And again, you're going to make 8 of those. And if you know how to make a magic ring, definitely make the magic ring first. But if you don't like magic rings like I do, then I just, again, chain 3, then go back into that very first chain and then make the double crochets inside of that 1 stitch. And after I've completed making 8 double crochets inside of that 1 stitch, the project should look something like this, which is like a ring. So now that you made this circular project out of your 8 double crochets inside of 1 stitch, you're going to finish off that row by slip stitching into the very first double crochet that you made. So this is going to be my last one. This is what it looks like, and now I'm going to slip stitch into that first double crochet that I made to complete the row, and this is what the project looks like. So from here, we're going to chain 2. Then we're going to go into the very same stitch that we just chained 2 from, and we're going to make 2 more double crochets inside of that same stitch, followed by a chain 1. Then inside that same stitch, we're going to make 3 double crochets, and that's going to serve as a corner piece. So after you've made your first corner piece, you're going to chain 1, then skip a stitch, then head on over to the following stitch and make yet another corner piece. Again, it consisted of 3 double crochets in the same stitch, followed by a chain 1 in between, then another set of 3 double crochets inside of the same exact stitch. And you're just going to follow that pattern all around your circle until you have 4 corner pieces. So now that I've completed my second corner piece, I'm going to chain 1 in between, then skip a stitch, then I'm going to make yet another corner piece by making 3 double crochets inside of that same stitch, then chaining 1 in between, then another 3 double crochets inside of that same stitch to complete the corner piece. And finally, I'm going to make the very last corner piece, the 4th one, by chaining 1 in between, then reaching on over to where I want my corner piece to be and making 3 double crochets inside of that one stitch, then chaining 1 in between, making another 3 double crochets inside of that one stitch, and after I've made my 3rd double crochet inside of that same stitch, completed my 4th corner piece, I'm going to chain 1 in between, then reach on over to the very first chain that I created for this row and slip stitch into it to complete the row, which is just 4 corner pieces. And after that, I'm going to add my brown yarn. So I'm just going to slip stitch to the very corner right here. So I just slip stitched 1 time so I could add the brown yarn where I left off, and then work my way into the very first corner piece. So grab your brown yarn, add it to your project however way you want to. All I do is literally just grab the yarn and put it on my hook and then use it as if it was the original color to begin with. And after the color is attached, I'm going to first make a chain of 2. Then I'm going to continue on with my double crochets inside of the previous corner piece. So 3 double crochets followed by chain 1, then another 3 double crochets inside of that gap in between the corner piece to make another corner piece inside of it, then chain 1, and we're going to go into the gap in between the 2 corner pieces right here, and we're going to make 3 double crochets inside of that gap. So 1, 2, and 3 double crochets inside of that opening. Then we're going to chain 1, reach on over to the corner piece opening, and we're going to make another corner piece inside of it, which is 3 double crochets followed by a chain 1 in between, which creates the gap for future rows on top of it, and then another 3 double crochets to complete the corner piece. Then you're going to chain 1, reach on over to the gap in between the 2 corner pieces and make 3 double crochets inside of that gap, then chain 1 and reach on over to the corner piece, make another corner piece inside of the opening of the previous row's corner piece by making 3 double crochets followed by a chain 1, then another set of 3 double crochets inside of that same exact opening. And after you've completed that corner piece, you're going to do the same thing, chain 1, go into the opening in between the 2 corner pieces, make 3 double crochets inside of that opening, and then you're going to chain 1, reach on over to the last corner piece of the project, and you're going to make another corner piece, which is 3 double crochets, then chain 1 in between, then another 3 double crochets, followed by making a chain 1, then go into the very last gap in between the 2 corner pieces and make 3 double crochets. And after you've made your 3rd double crochet into the last gap, you're going to chain 1, then slip stitch into the very first stitch that you created for the row, and voila, you are done with the granny square for Moana's top. Now of course you can make them bigger if you want to, but just 1 row of the brown is good for me. If you want to continue building upon it with more rows of the brown, then you just follow the exact same steps. But for me, this was enough. This was big enough, and I think it was really proportional to the rest of my project. So yeah, that's how I made my granny squares. Now I need to make a bunch of them so that it's enough to wrap around the entire project. For me, I ended up making a total of 8 of these granny squares, and they're able to stretch all along the top. So again, depending on your size, everyone's going to be different. So for me, I made 8, but for someone else, they may need to make more or less. So for me, again, I made 8 of them, but make sure that you're trying on your project and seeing how many will work for you. That way you don't make too many or too little. And now what we're going to do is actually attach these granny squares to the project, and what we're going to need to do first is align them. So first align them together and figure out how you want them to be placed. And once you figure out where you want them to be placed, then you're going to grab your brown yarn, since the last color that we used for this project was brown, and then the color that is on the outside of the granny squares is also brown. You won't be able to see the stitching in between, so that's why you're going to use the color brown. And you're going to slip stitch these granny squares to the top. Now it's a little bit hard to see because the color that we're using is dark, but what we're going to do is just align the granny squares to the top where we want them to be attached to, and then stitch into the granny square as well as into the top and create a slip stitch in through both of them. That way it's attached. So I'll show you how to attach this first one, and you're going to do the exact same thing with all the rest. So you're going to put your hook through the top as well as through the granny square, and then yarn over and slip stitch through both of them. Through the top, through the granny square, and slip stitch. Through the top, through the granny square, and slip stitch. Through the top, through the granny square, yarn over, slip stitch. Through the top, through the granny square, yarn over, slip stitch, until you get to the very end of the granny square, and then that's where you're going to add the next granny square and do the exact same thing all the way until the end of the top. So I'll show you what it looks like once you've attached one. So there is going to be a front and a back, so make sure that you're always attaching the granny squares the same way as you've attached the other ones, otherwise you're going to see the stitches in the front. So be sure that you're keeping that in mind when you're attaching all these granny squares together. So now that I've attached the first one, I'm going to go ahead and grab my next one and do the exact same thing. So the first thing I'm going to do again is attach all of the granny squares to the actual top, and then go back and attach all the granny squares together, because once you attach all the granny squares to the top only, this is what it looks like. Again, I made sure that whenever I attached the granny square that I attached it through the back, that way the stitching is shown only on the back and not the front. And now that they are attached to the top but not each other, they're all like flapping around. So now we have to go back and attach all of the granny squares to each other, that way it can be solid. See, I was just like flapping around. It's kind of funny. And all you're going to do is make sure that the two granny squares are aligned to one another, and then slip stitch through both of them so that they're attached. And then after that we can work on the rest of the top. And yeah, I feel like this is going to be the hardest part. So if this is frustrating you, no worries. Once you get past this, everything else is going to be fairly easy. So after you go back and make sure that all of the granny squares are attached to each other, I just want to show you the difference between not attached to each other and then attached to each other. Nice and solid and put together and cute. So this is what the project looks like once you're completely done attaching all the granny squares together. And now we're going to make one row of half double crochet with the brown. Well, you don't have to, but like this is what I did so that it's a little bit more even on the bottom here, because you see how it's kind of like scalloped a little bit. So I'm going to make one row of half double crochet using the brown color, and then we're going to switch back to the orange and finish off the rest of the top. So after I made my one row of half double crochet using my brown yarn, I cut the yarn from the yarn ball because we're no longer going to use brown for the crocheting part of this project. But don't put the brown away because we are going to be actually using it later for the details. Anywho, I'm going to tuck away the excess yarn, or you could just cut it off, and we're going to reattach the orange yarn and make 4 rows of half double crochet, or at least I made 4 rows of half double crochet. Again, try this project on as you're making it and make sure that the sizing is right. If you need to make things a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger, that's the beauty of crochet. You don't have to make a certain number of chains all the time. You can make it unique to you. But again, if you want it to look exactly like mine, then I'm letting you know how many rows and stuff of each thing that I'm doing. So again, I reattached my orange yarn, and I'm going to make 4 rows of half double crochet, and then from there I'm pretty sure that's going to be enough for it to be a proper crop top for me. But again, if it is too short for you, you want to make it longer, all you have to do is make more rows. So yeah, just go ahead and make those decisions based on your own body. And then after we've made our 4 rows of half double crochet, or again whatever number of rows you need, we're going to finish off the top by making a row of scallops. So once you're happy with the size of your project and are ready to add the scallops for the finishing touch, you're going to start from the edge of the project and you're going to make 2 half double crochets into the next 2 stitches, and then inside of that 3rd stitch is where you're going to make your very first scallop, which will consist of 2 half double crochets inside the same exact stitch, followed by a regular double crochet inside of that same exact stitch, followed by another double crochet inside of that same stitch, then 2 more half double crochets inside of that same exact stitch, and that's how we're going to be making these scallops from now on. You can see one right here. We're going to then skip a stitch, go into the next stitch and slip stitch into it. And then in the next one, we're also going to slip stitch into it. So skip a stitch, 2 slip stitches, and then make your next scallop, which is 2 half double crochets followed by 2 double crochets, all inside of the same exact stitch. Then finish off that scallop by making 2 more half double crochets inside of that same exact stitch. And then you're going to skip the next stitch, go into the following stitch, make 2 slip stitches in a row, then go into that next stitch and make another scallop, which is 2 half double crochets, then 2 double crochets, followed by another 2 half double crochets, all inside of the same exact stitch. And that is the pattern on how to make the scallops. So you're going to make these scallops all along the bottom of your top. And once you reach the end, then you will be completely done with this portion of the pattern and completely done with like the majority of crocheting the top, and the rest is just going to be the details. Now, for those of you who decided to make this top just a solid top, then you only need to attach the 2 ends together with a slip stitch to make it solid. But for those of you who decided to make it more of a lace-up design on the back like me, I'll show you how to make the straps. So this part is optional, but I like to do it so that it kind of just makes one even row at the edges of the top here. So I'm going to go all along the side of the top with 1 row of single crochet, and then once I reach the top of that, I'm going to make my strap. So again, this is totally optional. You could just cut the yarn from the yarn ball and then go to where you want the strap to be and attach the yarn and make your strap from there. But for me, I'm going to crochet my way up to where I want my strap to be and then make the strap. And now to make the strap, I'm just making one really long chain, and the reason why it needs to be really long is because it needs to crisscross along your back, so that's why it needs to be pretty long. So it needs to not only crisscross for the lace-up design, but also needs to be long enough for you to actually tie a knot in the back. So that's why I'm chaining 150 chains, and depending again on your size, you may need to make more or less, but for me 150 chains works. So I'm going to make 150 chains, and then once I've made my 150 chains, I'm going to go back on that chain with a slip stitch. And I like doing this because 1, it's more secure, it's a little bit thicker, and then also it's just more comfortable for me that way. So that's why I decided to go back on the chain with a slip stitch. And once I've done that, then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to the other side so that I have 2 straps. And once you have your 2 straps, you're going to figure out which side is the front, which side is the back, flip it over so that the back side is facing you, and then you're going to crisscross the straps by bringing 1 strap to the opposite side and attaching it to like the middle top portion. Then you're going to cross it over to the opposite side and attach it to like the middle portion. Then cross it over to the opposite side again and attach it to the bottom middle portion, and then finally cross it over to the opposite side one last time and attach it to the bottom of the top. So right now I'm grabbing the strap and bringing it to the opposite side, attaching it to the top middle. Then I'm going to bring it on over to the opposite side again and attach it to the middle. And then once I've attached it to the middle, I'm going to bring it over to the opposite side again and attach it to the bottom middle, then attach it to the bottom. And after you've attached one side like that, then you're going to do the exact same thing on the other side, just of course opposite. So after you've attached both of your straps, your project should look something like this. So now you could adjust it. And again, for those of you who decided to just make this a solid top, all you would have to do is bring the two sides together of the top, like the two, edges of the top, and just slip stitch from top to bottom and attach it similar to how we attached the granny squares together, and then you'll just have one solid top. And hooray, we're done with the actual crocheting part of the project, but now we need to add the details, which is a little bit complicated to explain, so hopefully the way I show you, you'll be able to understand it. So remember how I skipped making the two white cream stripes earlier? Well, now we're going to make those, but in a weird way. So I had this idea of crocheting on the sides of the project like this. And again, I have no idea how to even explain it. I'm making slip stitches, but like on top of the row. But sideways, I can't explain it, but hopefully now that you see what I'm doing, you can kind of recreate it. And if you decide like you don't want to do this, then when we get to this point in the tutorial, just make the two rows of white. But for me, I really wanted it to look more like the shells like Moana's top has, so that's why I thought that if I slip stitch sideways like this, it'll look cooler because like the stitches will look like shells. So that's why I decided to do it like this, even though it's kind of weird. I mean, it's not that difficult. It's just really hard to explain what I'm doing because I've never done this before. So I have no idea if this is actually a thing or if I just made it up. I don't think I'm the first person to ever do this. So if anyone knows what this is called, like this method is called, please let me know. But yeah, this is what the project looked like after one row of that method, and I think it turned out pretty cool. I think, again, my main goal is for it to look like the shells that go across Moana's top, and I think it definitely looks better than just making a regular row of half double crochet like the other stripes that we made. So I'm glad that I went with this one, even though again it was a little bit too hard to explain, but hopefully you could figure out how to make it yourself. It's like slip stitching sideways on top of the project. So I made 2 rows using that method with the white or cream yarn, and then I went ahead and grabbed my brown yarn again and started adding the other details to the top. So Moana's top has like these star details, these like line details, and I decided to kind of just weave in and out the yarn to recreate those designs. Very, very simplified versions of those designs, but I think it gets the job done. So again, all I'm doing is cutting pieces of yarn and then just weaving them in and out to recreate these shapes and patterns. So I did it for the top as well as the bottom. And this is what the project looks like now that I am completely done with the details and totally done crocheting this top. I am so happy with the design and quite proud of myself for coming up with this. Like, obviously it's so much easier to recreate something that you have a reference to, but I still couldn't really figure out like how to make it really look like Moana's top for a while. And when I came up with this, I'm like, oh my gosh, is it actually gonna work? And as I was crocheting this top, I was like, oh my gosh, it's coming together so nicely. And now that I'm done with it, I'm just like, again, so proud of myself. Anywho, I really hope that you enjoyed this design, that you had fun recreating this Moana top for the upcoming new Moana 2 movie too, so it's quite exciting. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you find it interesting, entertaining, or helpful, please give a big thumbs up before you go. And if you love crochet, I have so many crochet related videos on my channel, ranging from beginner friendly tutorials to more advanced crochet with me, style my crochet, and so much more. And if you love Disney and all things fandom related, please follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Both are at Krystal Everdeen. I share all of my magical adventures on there, and I'd love to see you there. Thank you so much again for watching. Don't forget to click that red subscribe button if you have not already, so I can see you next time. Bye, and have a magical day.